Progressing from simple stone to powerful adamantite gear in Hytale entails the completion of several key steps, including the crafting and upgrading of multiple crafting stations. To do so will require us to collect various materials that are only found in specific regions or biomes. All of that will be covered in this guide, and as usual, useful timestamps can be found in the video description. I recommend watching this video through from start to finish before using it as a step-by-step guide. Beginning with Tier 0 or stone gear, we can scavenge the area surrounding the starter spawn for stone rubble, sticks, and plant fiber. These items will allow us to craft a stone or crude pickaxe and hatchet. With those, we can cut down some nearby trees for logs and tree sap and mine some cobblestone. These items will allow us to make our first crafting station, the Workbench. This is where all utility tools, crafting stations, and other essentials are made. We can also craft a crude mace or other weapon here to defend ourselves as we venture into the caves below. Torches will allow us to light our way when things get dark, and it's at this point that we are ready to move on to Tier 1 gear, copper and iron. There ought to be an easily accessed cave somewhere close to the starter spawn. We can venture down to find copper and iron ore, and as a tip for efficiency, we can hold shift and right-click our stack of torches to separate just one from the bunch, then equip it on our character's offhand. This will allow us to provide constant light with just a single torch, as long as we are holding a one-handed tool like the pickaxe. In Hytale, ore also glimmers in the dark and the color shows what it is. Copper has an orange gleam to it, while iron is a bit deeper down and gives off a dull gray. Avoid going so deep that you reach lava, as the enemies down at that depth are difficult and not worth the effort of dealing with. If we can manage to collect at least 40 copper and 10 or more iron before returning to the surface, we can consider our first trip a resounding success. Back topside, we can craft a furnace or two, then put in a fuel source along with our ore to start converting it into bars. It might be a good time to build a shelter and craft a sleeping sack. Alternatively, if you manage to find a pre-made structure nearby, you can renovate it and make it your own. Next, we'll want to craft an armorer's workbench and blacksmith's anvil, as these are required to get the most out of our various metal bars. I recommend making a copper mace or weapon of choice along with a pair of daggers. That's because the daggers can be used to cover large distances quickly. To do so, hold the left mouse click or primary attack to charge up, then jump while moving forward just before it triggers the attack to hurtle through the air. This is super useful for general traveling purposes and also for chasing down wild animals like deer, which serve as a good source of light hide. Speaking of which, we should now turn towards collecting a few additional materials, those being linen scraps and light hide. Also, rubble of any kind is usually worth grabbing whenever you see it, as it can be used to craft arrows. Smaller animals like chickens and rats, along with larger herbivores such as cows and deer, drop light hide. Meanwhile, trolls, skeletons, and goblins are all good sources of linen scraps. The skeletons also drop bone fragments, of which we will eventually need around 20. While roaming near the spawn point, we can head into the nearby Forgotten Temple. After defeating the golem in the basement, we can travel through the gateway. This will bring us to a hub, the main Forgotten Temple. This area is still under development, but we can interact with the Heart of Orbis to unlock the Memories feature. New memories are unlocked by exploring the world of Hytale, and as we accrue more memories, we can return to the Heart of Orbis to record them and unlock new rewards. Continue scavenging for light hide and linen scraps, and if you see any of the large moss horn, make sure to hunt them down for their heavy hide. We won't need this until a bit later, but we might as well get some whenever we have an easy opportunity to do so. Once we have around at least 15 to 20 light hide and linen scraps, we can return to our home base and craft the tanning rack at the workbench. This is where we will process all of our hide into the more usable leather. We can also craft a campfire if we haven't already done so and cook all of our raw meat at it. This will serve as our primary source of healing, as wild meat is easy to come by and heals a considerable amount. All we technically need to start working on unlocking tier 2 gear is an iron pickaxe. However, I highly recommend mining up enough copper and iron to at least craft a full set of copper armor, although iron is better, and also craft your preferred weapons with iron. An iron crossbow and a couple hundred arrows will also be very helpful with certain enemies that we are likely to face. As for upgrading our 3 main crafting stations to tier 2, and of the materials we already covered, we will need a total of 50 copper bars, 40 iron bars, 30 light leather, and 50 linen scraps. There are a few new materials that we will also need to gather, and we'll cover those as we make our way to the zone where thorium can be found. That zone is the desert and can often be found to the south of the starting point. While moving south, first we will need 20 medium leather, which is made from medium hide. This can be obtained from medium-sized or threat beasts such as wolves. If you see any troll camps on the map, they may be worth visiting, as trolls will often have wolf companions. We are also now tough enough to take on the occasional brown bear for heavy leather, just be sure to block and avoid strikes whenever possible. There ought to be at least one blue tinted forest on our way to the desert where Azure logs can be farmed. We'll need a total of 100 to upgrade our armorer's workbench. I was able to find thorium somewhere between the Howling Badlands and Desolate Basin biomes, both of which are desert-like. Thorium can be found in caves within the desert, but the most important tip I can give for finding specific ore, like thorium, is to look for it on the surface of wherever you are. It should be pretty easy to find a few deposits of it above ground. If it isn't, then there is a fair chance that you won't be finding it in any nearby caves either. However, if you do find some green ore on the surface, then definitely check any nearby caves for the same. Once you've found a cave with thorium, just be sure to stay above the deepest points where lava is, as biome-specific ore tends not to spawn that deep. Technically, we only need thorium for tier 3 crafting station upgrades, and for that, a total of 80 ore or bars will be required. However, if you plan on making a full set of thorium gear, then substantially more will be needed. Also keep an eye out for Scarrak hives underground, as this bug-like enemy type is a good source of sturdy chitin, which we will eventually need around 40 of. The flying Scarrak are a deadly enemy type, and a ranged weapon is pretty much required to take them down. However, they are a good source of both sturdy chitin and venom sacs. The chitin will only be needed for tier 3 crafting station upgrades, but to get our anvil to tier 2, 15 venom sacs will be needed. If you're fortunate enough to find a Scarrak hive like I was, then it might be a good idea to venture down into it to harvest as much chitin as possible before leaving the desert. 40 chitin will eventually be needed. I'll quickly mention that other sources of venom sacs include snakes and any giant spider. Once we have all required materials, we can journey back to our home base and upgrade our 3 crafting stations to tier 2. At this point, you can muster up whatever necessary materials to craft any piece of thorium equipment that you'd like before heading north towards the snow biomes for Cobalt. Just remember that we will need a total of 80 Thorium bars to get all 3 of our essential crafting stations to tier 3. There are several more new materials that we will also need to reach tier 3, which we can get into now. I'll list them all off now and then we can get into each one individually. In addition to the 80 Thorium bars and 40 sturdy chitin, both of which we already covered, we will also need 30 heavy leather, 70 cobalt bars, 90 Shadoweave scraps, 40 essence of ice, 45 essence of fire, 100 essence of the void, and 3 Voidhearts. We can start off with the Shadoweave scraps and cobalt ore, both of which are found in the northern snowy biome. Look within the Boreal Reach and Everfrost regions for blue cobalt ore on the surface. Use the same rules then as mentioned with thorium to find caves that contain substantial amounts of cobalt. Several enemy types, but mainly the icy skeletons here, drop essence of ice upon defeat. Again, we will need at least 40 of this essence along with 70 cobalt ore. If you plan on crafting cobalt armor or other gear, you'll need up to an additional 120 cobalt ore. For Shadoweave scraps, we will need to find active camps of Viking-like warriors known as Doomed Outlanders. Such locations are fairly sparse, and I recommend defeating any polar bears that you find while roaming for heavy hide or leather, which we will need at least 30 of, and a whole lot more in order to make adamantite armor. In any case, the Doomed Outlanders can be particularly nasty, so I recommend ranged weapons for attack whenever possible. A total of 90 Shadoweave scraps will be needed for all bench upgrades, and more on top of that if you also want to craft any cobalt gear. Feel free to make a trip back to home base to store your loot, then move towards one of the many large volcanic islands that spawn a fair distance away from the home base. I found that the nearest ones are usually east of the starting spawn point, with several larger ones being further north or south. These islands are where we will find the main materials for crafting adamantite gear, which at the time of recording this video is the highest tier of gear that can currently be made in adventure or exploration mode. The islands are sometimes almost entirely gray and black on the map, and in my experience, such islands contain next to no adamantite ore. Instead, we want to look for islands with the telltale dull green and mud-colored landscapes of the Cinder wastes. Plenty of red adamantite ore should be visible on the surface along with silver and cobalt ore. If not, look elsewhere. A bit over 120 adamantite bars in total will be required to craft a full set of adamantite armor along with a pickaxe, hatchet, bow, and two-handed weapon of choice. In addition to that, each piece of gear will also require a specific amount of Cindercloth scraps and heavy leather. Most enemy types found on these volcanic islands will drop Cindercloth scraps and/or essence of fire when defeated. The most dangerous enemy types are the ones wielding scythes, the demonic dogs, and the skeleton alchemists that throw unblockable explosives. The last materials we need to cover are the essence of the void and Voidhearts. These can be found most easily at night by defeating the various Voidspawn enemies. This enemy type is easily identified by their glowing green eyes. Voidspawn will almost always drop essence of the void upon defeat, regardless of the type. However, stronger variants such as the flying Voidspawn that resemble a beholder from D&D have a moderate chance to drop a Voidheart upon defeat. As a reminder, we will need 3 Voidhearts and 100 Essence of the Void for our Tier 3 upgrades. Once all necessary materials are collected and processed as needed, we can upgrade all 3 of our essential crafting stations to Tier 3. We can then collect any additional adamantite, heavy leather, and Cindercloth scraps that are needed to make our adamantite gear set. With that, we'll be fully equipped to handle any challenges we come across as we endeavor to make and upgrade other crafting stations, such as those needed for magic. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me in the comments where I will do my best to help. If you want to see more great content, you can head over to my channel, and if you're new, consider subscribing. You're helping me feed my cat. Her name's Marshmallow. Have a great day. If you're here today, have a great Friday and a great weekend. And as always, thanks for watching.